Hello.
Hey Akash, trying to adjust my window. I have lost my participant window. How do I get it back?
If you want to stop sharing screen, maybe it'll pop back up.
That's true. Okay. I've also lost the stop sharing. Okay, it's on another screen. Oh, I see it. Okay. I think I know what's happening. It's very interesting. So something happened to my windows and it's like all the background has gone all black, like instead of the usual blue, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it's all gone all black, and the zoom bar at the top, it's the exact same color of the background, so it's gone invisible.
Oh, I see.
Two
Okay.
contrasting issues. I was like, where did it go? But
Interesting.
yeah, it's like gray on black or black on black. Just having a look at if there's anyone else that needs to be admitted. Yeah, I'll try to check my other screen for people in the lobby. Hello, Josh.
Hey, are you all settled now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, not completely, but like almost there.
Good to hear. I moved all the way down into my basement. I traveled a long way.
But that's a big move.
Yeah.
Is it like better, more space in a different
No,
area?
it's a lot less space, but it's good for me. You know, I switched it because I'm giving my son that room. So yeah, he's got more time, more space for Legos. That's what's important, you know.
Yeah. The kids got to build stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think we're gonna get a slightly lower quorum today because of the Dragon Boat Festival in China.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the folks from China will not attend today.
Yeah, do you know the story of Dragon Boat Festival?
I don't. What is it?
Akash is smiling. Do you already know Akash? Did Raymond try to share?
Raymond tried to share, but I didn't get the full story out of it. So
yeah, I don't myself don't know the whole story, but I remember the story being, in short, is like a poet who's very respected, and he was also maybe a politician or something, like he was good for the people and stuff like that. He died, so maybe he committed suicide in the lake, but his body was in the lake, and the people thought, oh, the fish would eat his body. So there's two parts to this festival. One is Dragon Boat. Like if the people made a lot of noise in the water, then the fish would be scared and they wouldn't eat the body of the respected poet / politician. And the other part is like the Chinese culture have the like rectangular shaped food called zongzi, which is like stuff wrapped in rice. They also eat that during this festival, and they feed it to the fish in the lake. So if the fish have rice to eat, they also wouldn't touch the body of the person.
So the point is to keep the fish out of the eating the poet.
Yeah, that was my take on the story. Like, of course, like there's this whole story behind this very well-respected person, but the way to celebrate this day is to eat the rice wrapped triangle and do Dragon Boat.
Nice. Do they like have any festivities around that here in the Puget Sound area? Like in
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Good to explore. Raymond might be very have more information on that.
Got it. Got it.
Okay, so let's review our PR. Starting from the bottom, Bin is continuing to work on the integration for OPA engine. Luis, after we have the RC6 milestone, we can tag the issues.
Yes.
Yes. So we'll continue working on this milestone, and same as the Redis, Akash continues to work on the cache unification.
Akash, did you merge the lint changes?
I did, yes.
Okay, okay, got it.
And for the RC2 to RC3 open container spec, is that something we're thinking that would be completed this milestone, Akash?
So I know Notation has adopted it. I know the Auris CLI has adopted it, but seems like Auris Go has not switched to the new RC3 spec. And that's kind of the main one that we need to look for. So maybe next week when Shuei is here too, we can get some more guidance on when that is going to get merged, and then we can update afterwards.
Okay, so our question is, when will Notation Go take the spec update?
When will Auris Go take it?
Yeah. Auris Go. Okay, let me just make a note. Auris Go. C3. And Sigstore has a dependency on the spec update.
Yep.
And then is Josh's PR. I see there's a lot of changes in this PR.
Yeah, just
Josh,
in the docs repo.
do you want to talk a little bit about the motivation?
Sure. Yeah. So I sat down with Akash and we kind of just went through, and I came through it as a new developer where I've used it, I've implemented it, but now I want to learn a little bit more about it. And so I just went in and kind of restructured the documentation and different folders that made it easier to navigate. And then I tried to create a README inside the docs folder that kind of guides you through the quick starts, like things, the guides that told me how to do something, and versus the reference documentation that explained what things were. And so that README might need a little bit of tweaking. The other ask that I have as someone reviews this is to flag documents that are in the quick start or reference as needing refreshed or needing archive. I just don't have enough context yet to be able to make that call. But yeah, if we look at the main structure, what I did was I moved all the images to an images folder. So that was kind of nested in with the documents and muddied the waters a bit. And so I moved that all out and then updated the links. And then I consolidated or I believe it was developer and reference. So I moved those two into one. So it's just reference documentation for kind of the conceptual overview type stuff or deep dives. And then I renamed the examples to quick starts. And then inside there, it has plugin creation and then scenarios. And then if you look at the README at the root of docs, it kind of gives a nice index for the entire folder that walks through it.
This is very cool, Josh. I'll definitely take a look.
Awesome.
Is there any specific way you want us to flag any outdated?
We could put like a metadata, like, in markdown metadata, we could just put a flag there, or even a comment in the PR would be sufficient. That's probably the easiest. Like, this document needs to be archived, or this one should be flagged for a refresh. And then we can kind of go and then we could open an issue per thing that needs to be refreshed, going from there. I think a good one was the overview article. Like, there's still good information in there, but there's a lot that's just not correct yet, or is no longer correct, perhaps is the better way to say it. And so that would be a prime candidate for a refresh. But I figured get it all organized in a consistent place first, and then we can move to archive as needed. There's a new folder called archive for that stuff. I put the meeting notes in there as well, just so it's kind of a little bit hidden, not front and center, because it's more historical record versus useful information for a new dev. But yeah, and then we can kind of work through on an article by article basis.
Yeah, and you only look in the docs folder, right?
Yes, this is only docs and below. So there's no.
Yeah, I think there are some other pieces of documentation in other folders in code, which might need to move, might have a better place here. So I think that's another place we can help here with the doc restructuring. I think this is a very, very good step that direction.
Awesome.
Thank you, Josh. I have a question with the permanent form of the docs. Earlier, we had the design of the Ratify website. So are we thinking the docs will live in the repo, or do we think the docs will go live on the website?
I would imagine that the docs would probably live. I'm not sure how it's publishing the website, but typically they'll have the docs inside the repo, and then some of those get published to the website, depending. So like if it's an end-to-end scenario, that'd be a markdown here that then would be also mirrored in the website. But there might be some reference documentation, like just like the usage of the CLI or stuff that wouldn't make sense as like an article, but would make really good sense as a supporting documentation inside the repo. So I guess that the short version of it is, depending on the document type, it could live in both or just the repo.
Yeah, once we'll get the website, we'll have clarity on the workflow.
And my hope is with this restructuring, it makes it more clear which should be ported over the website. Like all the quick starts would probably be good candidates as content for the website.
Yeah, so we have already, so we have a website on website proposal live. I saw also Feynman started, or Geo Feynman started a thread. Bridge is gonna get us a repo to basically check in the website. So we'll have a repo specifically for the website as well soon. So hopefully that goes live in the next milestone or so.
Yeah, I'd throw that back to everyone maintaining the repo too. Once you have the website, you could throw all the docs over to that as well. It's all on how you want to maintain the docs moving forward.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Josh, one more thing that I forgot to mention when we were chatting is that we actually have a ton of our engineering design docs that live in our personal HackMD subscriptions. And we've kind of been scratching our heads on how do we get that into here? What's like the best way to do that?
Archive.
So, yeah, archive or something, but it's very distributed and scattered. So any suggestions you have there based off of other repos you've seen would be great.
Okay. A lot of I guess the shell is there. So what I've seen in the past is a lot of people, they kind of dump them into the reference. And then, you know, if it's completely out of date and you just want a historical record, move to archive. But typically they're moved into reference. Or on the website as kind of a reference inside of a drop down there. You know, like on docs, they have the reference hierarchy there, and that's usually generated, automatically generated reference material based on the API and stuff. But if it's more design documentation, I'd probably just port it into reference. And then we can create, I think in reference, there's a CRD folder. So if there starts to be kind of like the threshold for me is about 3 documents around a particular area. That's justification for a subfolder in reference. And so maybe it's executor has 3 documents, you know, that are all roughly related. We can create an executor folder and then move them in there. So it's just a little bit easier to navigate versus the flat structure.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think we can start by like porting over some of those documents, copying the markdown into actual committed files and then sort through them.
Cool.
Yeah, or going forward, Akash, without design docs, our design doc is more like a half design and half discussion doc, where we talk about the pros and cons, and sometimes we don't necessarily document the actual implementation. So, but going forward, we should move to whatever model that we decide, like we can check it in more like a formal design doc and make sure that's complete and up to date with the latest.
Well, it might be a good
actual
exercise to go
implementation.
through, like review the existing documents out on Hacker and come up with current state, right? It might be a good opportunity to be like, here's the current state, and write that as a doc, and then all the other like supporting documents can be moved into archive and linked back as reference inside the new doc that's been created with the current understanding. That might be one way to move forward too, instead of trying to kludge it all together in one or just shoving it all in archive. But
Yeah, I know Akash is working actively have a design doc, so so I thought I'd mention that we could check it in this time.
Yeah, I have like, I think like 20 plus documents in my personal HackMD now, and I don't know how to track those.
knowledge hoarder. That's good.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. We'll be able to review the doc restructuring PR.
Awesome. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Sure. Next one, add Ratify logo. I guess this PR is just adding the logo file to the repository.
Yeah.
Have we all signed off on this logo already?
I think this one was the one that was set up to a voting, and this one was the one that most people voted for.
Cool.
It's
So
been-
this one is good to merge.
I think so, yeah. It's been reviewed by PM, by devs. So I think this is okay. It's not,
Okay.
this one is not including the letter or the typography. I think this one is just the logo, the drawing. So I think we should be fine. I think there were still like questions around licensing of the font, but I think this one is not using the font. So we should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, we can sign off and merge this later.
For the logo, did we want to add it to the top of the README also in this PR? I think right now just the file has been added, but I know like some other projects like Gatekeeper and stuff, they right above, like right where Ratify is, right above that, they put the logo first. So when you land on this, it would have that. I believe Gatekeeper does that, or
Yeah, I'm just having a quick look.
Yeah.
Do they?
oh, they don't do it. There's a few other projects I've seen that does this.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't seen it in the README file, but I'll have a look. But definitely the website should have like the logo,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Cool. So we have discussed the doc restructuring. Joshua, do you have anything to add? Just going through
No.
our agenda items.
Yeah, that's it for me. Trivia is an example I threw in the chat. They've got the icon there in the middle.
Let me bring it up. Aqua security.
And all the fancy buttons, but
Yeah, like marketing. Wow, 13 million downloads.
Wow.
Impressive.
We're getting there.
How do they know how many downloads they have? Like, is that something we can see from our package download?
if you look at the raw, they might be able to tell you where they're getting that source from.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're probably getting it. Looks like it's, I would assume with the GitHub icon, it's downloads from GitHub. So there must be some way to track that.
Right. Yeah. The GitHub offers all these different types of metrics. Like
They're probably hitting an API on the repo and pulling it that way.
right.
Oh, very impressive numbers.
Well, as far as getting closer to the 13 million, I'll be doing a live stream end of July, early August. It'll be a redelivery of the workshop, and so Ratify will be in there. So some more publicity there.
Nice. Yeah, I was kind of expecting the Amazon announcement would give us more traffic, but no, it hasn't really spiked up. But yeah, so probably something coming from other companies might bring that up. We'll see.
There was some analysis by Feynman posted to some channel that I was in. He did some telemetry that said on the announcement day of the AWS signer, there were hundreds of more clicks on some Ratify related page.
Oh, okay.
And he was also analyzing where the traffic came from. So it was mostly from the US. And the second place, I think, was India. And China traffic was less than 10%. It's what I remember. Like I can find that and share it with you, Luis.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving on to RC6 planning. So Luis, will you be able to create the milestone, or do I have the permission to create a RC6 milestone and move everything over?
I feel like you should be able, but I can create it right now. New milestone.
Yep. Luis, do you want to share screen and we can look at what are the items that we need to bring forward to RC6?
Yes. Give me 1 second.
So let me make you the host. There you go.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so let's go back and clean up. What? We never completed RC4. Okay. Let's see what's here that needs to move or complete. Multiple signatures verification. This is what Bin is working on.
Yeah, these are related to the OPA engine, so we can move them to 6.
Yes. Oh, I haven't created 6. And then let's put as a target. We are on the 20th. I'm sorry, we released on the 16th. So July 21st. Does that sound like a good date? We'll have the, yeah, okay, that's, okay. So going back here, this is what Bin is doing. Add documentation for local Kubernetes setup.
That one's Feynman's taking it, but I don't know if there's a timeline for it.
Let's move it to, yeah, let's move it to 6. Unify in memory caches, so this is also 6. Well, the in-memory ones, yeah, you already, yeah. So we think this is an RC6, right? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
We couple nested references from verifiers.
This one's also, I think, related to Bin's PR.
Create a walkthrough to set up cosine verifier. This one was one that wants we need documentation. Move cosine doc out of here. The steps are more discoverable. Okay.
Yeah, do we currently have a cosine walkthrough? It used to be part of the AWS. And that's still the case.
Yes.
I see. So we basically want something that's more standalone. So this is one that we have tagged as documentation, right? So could be on the next milestone. Josh, do you have any? Do you have anything that you're planning already on working next?
Let's see here. I'm working on right now. I'm doing the setup notation adoption of CNCF, but after that, I think that would take me the next month or so. But then after that, I've got some bandwidth, and I was talking to Akash too about maybe picking up some dev work in Ratify as well. But
I see. Okay, so then this is. I'm just gonna move it out of the. Yeah,
Josh, have there, like during your workshops, do cosine come up? Like, how do I set up cosine signature verification in the pipeline?
Not really. Some people have said they kind of see the switch, like, oh, I could just switch out notation for cosine, and they're familiar with it. But it hasn't come up it hasn't come up that often. I think maybe once or twice.
Thanks. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
I think we still need to fix this one, right? We're pinning to the latest version. Sorry, we're not pinning to the latest version in our docs.
Yeah.
Let's try to fix this. Fix config policy provided for nested references.
I don't think we're gonna actually fix this because we'll switch over to Binbin's new OPA engine, and this won't be.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so Bin's already mentioned the OPA engine. He's linked in the comment.
Yeah, so I'll let him close it then. Okay, so RC4 should be good. Okay, close.
Hooray!
Yeah, RC5. Move quick start assets to permanent. So this one is the one that we talked about, or I chat to you this morning about, Susan.
Yep. Do we already have a GHCR repository, or do we need to create one?
So I asked Lucky and everyone. I can forward you the email. So there is one that they use for eraser. So I think we do already have. We don't have a repo. We probably need to create a repo specifically for the sample. So I think that would be more something like Ratify -quick start or something like that. But it's under, and so for instance, the eraser one is Azure/eraser. So I guess I'm assuming that we should be able to write under the Azure namespace. I'll forward you that. The eraser team, I think for the what we'll need to do for the first iteration is either do an ORAS copy or like potentially like build the package and do the initial deployment so that we can actually know what the location is for customers. But what the eraser team did is they actually have a whole pipeline that builds the images, deploys them into the Ratify or the eraser repo, and then they constantly like log it into the GHCR. So I can send you an example of where they do that, and you can take a look, Susan. I think
historically for our to get started quick start images, they were manually pushed, right?
I think so. You
We
mentioned
don't
in the
currently have a pipeline. Okay.
right. I don't think we do. So the sort of the first step is getting the images there. Have like the known place where we're going to refer the docs to, and then set up a pipeline that automatically like pushes, builds them or packages them and builds them. Pushes them.
Got it. Should I open another, like, I think the first item we can just do the manual push, and then I can open another item for the pipeline.
Yes, that makes sense.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, I can self-assign that after the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. All right. So we got it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that, Susan, I was curious about this, so I tried to ORS copy into our own repo because we have the admin privileges. And the way GHCR works is you generate a personal access token on GitHub, and then you use that with the correct permissions assigned to it. So write package permission, and then you can just do a Docker login with that. And so it logged me into GHCR, but when I tried to ORS copy, our repo wouldn't allow me to actually create the package. It said insufficient scope permission. So maybe you'll have better luck with that, but ORS copy failed for that reason.
So which report gave you insufficient scope?
Our Ratify, so days/Labs/Ratify. When I tried to copy so I set that as the destination repo, and I put the ACR as the source, and it failed because insufficient permissions to create the package. I tried doing that on my personal fork for Ratify, and that succeeded because I guess I have the right permissions for that. So I don't know why there's like some extra level above admin maybe that you need.
Yeah. So if we're moving the images from ACR to GHCR, what permission do we need for the Ratify repository?
So based off of the online documentation, it just said that the personal access token that you use to log into Docker or log into ORS in this case, you select read package, write package, and that's all the permissions on the token that you need. And then using that token, it should auth properly, but it wouldn't let me create the package. So it's almost like that's a separate scope. And in my view, I don't even see that as an option to create package when I create the personal access token. So
I see. So between moving it and recreating it, we'll see which one is easier.
yeah, so maybe Docker push would work. Although I would assume it's the same gesture because when you copy, it's the same APIs that are running. But you could definitely maybe try pushing like a dummy image to days/Labs/Ratify, and then you can delete that too. It's easy to delete. So
yeah, I'll play around. Thanks.
Susan, Jeremy Ricard might also be able to help. So I just added you to the thread. Yeah, again, let me see if I can open the. He basically refers this, and as you can see, like they do like Docker login action. There's like a logger action they do all their builds, and then where's the deploy? Build collector, build Docker. Probably not here. Let me see. What was the deploy? So if you go into Eraser YAML, they have a. Oh, probably I shouldn't. Oh no, this is open source. Yeah, log into GHCR and then there's like a login action. You basically set the registry, but so he should be able to help.
If it works in a pipeline, Akash, and the pipeline probably uses like a different permission to our personal account.
You'll probably have to create, so I helped Stack with their GitHub enterprise migration. So what you'll probably do is create an account, like a separate GitHub account that is an organizational member. And then you'll create a PAT token for that user. And then that user will be the one that runs. That way it's not using Susan's or Akash's token. But yeah, you'd have to create a separate user and then add it to the organization to run it like on its own in the pipeline. It's fun.
Yeah.
And
So should we start by just setting up a pipeline properly? Because we don't want to use anything under our personal token. Like it doesn't, that's not.
You would,
the
I guess it would,
solution.
what you'd be able to figure out is what permission sets you need. And so, you know, if you're not able to check the box for contributor, you'll have to find someone, or maybe it's, I don't know if Diaz Lab is managed through that repositories, that like Microsoft's overview page, you know, where you get like create Azure sample repos. Have you used that at all? Let me find a link to that. It's the repos.opensource.microsoft.com. And so that's like, I don't know if you've logged into or not, but it's a website that sits over top of all the GitHub organizations. And so it can auto provision in there. And so I don't know if Diaz Labs is a part of that, where you could create a user from inside that portal and give it the right permissions.
Yeah, I don't know the
I'll send it to you in a
legal
DM.
entity structure very well. Yeah, but we'll try it out.
Yeah, I think the thing here is like if we can build a pipeline, I think that they wanted to have like sort of the permanent location relatively soon, so that they can build a walkthrough. So people internal can build a walkthrough and point to this. But if not, then yeah, let's just do maybe potentially if we can figure out the whole permission stuff, like do an ORAS copy, or if possible, or something that we can set the images manually while we actually figure the pipeline. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Just reading the RC6 items. I haven't spoken to Eve about the timeline of the get secret AKV improvement. So instead of using get secret, that we need to use the instead of get certificate, we should use get secret. Is that something we need to fix this RC release?
I would call into that. Let's see what do we have in our issue list. I think there's the, okay, so we talked about this one. I don't think this one should prioritize this one. Configure cosine public key via CRD. I think one of the things we wanted to do was to refactor a bit our certificate store more into a plugin model. Susan, did you want to take this one?
So I think there's a separate item changing the interface, and this cosine public key would be just adding another CRD. Like it ideally should be implemented after we've modified the interface. So
right, because we have this one for cosine. We also have the HashiCorp Vault.
So the HashiCorp Vault is adding a new implementation for certificate store, versus the cosine public key is adding a new CRD.
I see,
so it
right.
would be a different type because it's a key instead of a certificate.
Right. Makes sense. So where's the refactoring one for?
It's created by Feynman is what I remember. So if we did like author Feynman, maybe.
Is it the post policy provider refactoring?
Do you have the issue number, Josh?
It's it's the third, fourth one from the bottom on your screen. Oh, it went away.
Oh,
Okay.
let me.
Yeah, not created by Feynman.
How do I remove that? Okay, I'm just gonna go back. Oh, clear current. Okay. Which one were you saying?
Go down 3. Right above your cursor. Oh, so right above Redis, there's this post policy provider refactor. I don't know if that's it, but I was just for.
Is it
Oh,
790?
This one, investigate restrictions on no.
I think if you click on the HashiCorp Vault one, he might have tagged that other issue in it.
Or it could be just like bunched up in one, like no separate issue.
Yeah, maybe we don't have another.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well,
I'll look for it. I can create one if needed.
So let's look at the list here. There's a couple that have already been assigned. So this one, I think, so we're working on it this sprint, this milestone. So Akash, so you have 2 items you mentioned. There's the finishing up the whole HA. I think one of the big ones that's remaining is the OCI store. Is this something you'll be working on on this?
No, I don't think I'll get to it because actually, if we have time remaining, I wanted to talk a little bit about some Redis cache findings that I've had over the last few weeks that may require a pivot in the current implementation.
I see. Okay, yeah,
So,
go for it.
Yeah, if I don't want to stop if we still have some more RC6 planning to do.
I have one more item related to planning, but we'll do the tree watch for the items first.
Yeah, go for it, Susan.
Okay, so from Shuwei's team, I think we have a new contributor. So Louis Akash, have you heard? So if you have any items that you think it's like good for like getting started, we can tag him. I think his last name is Zhu, but I forgot his first name.
Yeah, no, I think isn't it Xiaoshan?
And yeah, that doesn't ring a bell. No.
We'll have to confirm.
Yeah. But
yeah,
yes,
we can.
I think it'll be good for him to just, instead of reading a bunch of docs, like it's always easier to ramp up if you have a concrete task.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, let's think about that. So I know Bin wanted to work on this. The error. Yeah, so Susan, I think this one then does make sense if you want to take it.
I don't know if it will, like this one would come after the
interface
refactoring of the interface, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned there is already like, yeah, we just can't find it, right?
Yeah, I'll create one. I will look into the HashiCorp one further. Like maybe Feynman has added suggestion in the description of the HashiCorp vault. But if I can't find one, I'll create one.
Okay.
And there's also that one where we need to change the implementation of get certificate, because I think it may not be needed for this milestone, but it's definitely on E's priority list. But it needs to be kind of reviewed from an end-to-end workflow, like, because we've mentioned, oh, the customer will need to mark the key vault as non-exportable private key, etc. But like there's a workflow to the whole thing for it to work.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see any of that here.
It was created as a bug by Bin. I think the title has like get secret in it. If you search for secret in the title. Yep, if you type secret, I think it might pop up.
Oh, this also includes the what's closed.
Yeah, you can just click on the open one. Like at the moment, there's a tick in front of 48 closed. If you click open, it'll add the filter. So it's number 695. Ratify should retrieve the entire certificate chain from Key Vault.
Right. I see. Yeah, so then this one.
Yeah, we can put this one on RC6 as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think that you have something with this, and then we'd also want to set up the pipeline for the sample. So I think we still need to add an issue for that one. Okay, makes sense. Anything else for planning?
I don't know how familiar everybody is with GitHub Actions, but if everyone's new to them and needs any help, let me know. I've been dabbling in that for a while. So just want to throw that out there. And if it's not needed, don't worry about it.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
I'll reach out. I'll take it.
Okay. Cool. All right. So Kash, do you want to speak about the limitations and things you've seen?
Sure. So I'll give I've written 2 documents on this. I'll link them, but since we have 10 minutes, I'll just talk about it briefly. So I was doing a little bit of a security analysis on these cache centralization based off of our comments a few weeks ago to make sure that we're not going to be leaking credentials or we're going to be storing anything sensitive in a centralized cache that could be used by potentially other applications installed on the cluster. And as part of that, I started to look specifically at storing, our current implementation stores the registry credentials inside the Redis cache instance. And it treats it as any other cache value that's stored in the cache. And by default, Redis does not provide security. The premise for Redis is that when you install Redis, you're supposed to install it in a secure environment where you trust all the actors have access to the Redis instance. So you can password protect it, but the whole point of password protection is authorization and not partitioning of the data. So you can't partition the Redis instance by different databases. So one database has a user X has access, while another database user Y only has access. So unfortunately, what that means is that if there's a centralized Redis instance, and that is a common practice because you're going to run Redis in cluster mode, you could have other projects using the same cache instance, and then they could potentially look up that same cache key, which has the registry credentials, and that's not secure. So I was unsure what the security boundary at first was, but I talked to a few people internally, and it seems like we need to be able to account for this scenario. So either 1, we don't store these sensitive credentials in a centralized cache, or 2, have some sort of way of enforcing like encryption, decryption on those values. So the first route is if we don't store those values in the cache, then the problem is, well, how do the different replicas share those credentials? And that's pretty key for performance reasons. At a closer look, the performance hit from not sharing credentials for pods are not as big of a deal because it's the first time that the registry auths, and after that point, we can store those credentials in memory. So that's okay. There's potentially some redundant auth operations to registry initially between the different pods, but if your replica set isn't too huge, like our default is going to be 3, it should be okay. The bigger problem is how we handle external verifiers. So any plugin that gets imported as a binary and run, so cosine, SBOM, all of those. Currently, the way our verifiers work is that the verifier itself has direct access to the store, which has all the artifacts. So it's in charge of calling the store to pull the data from registry. And because these external plugins are running as separate processes, the ORAS store does not have those credentials cached because it's an in-memory cache. So it's a separate process. So the cache is not shared, which would mean that every time you call an external plugin for verification, you're recreating the cache, you're re-authenticating. That's the biggest issue. That's definitely not scalable. We cannot be doing that. So we need some sort of way to either pipe credentials through the standard into the external verifier, that is already a security issue, and I don't think that's a solution. Or we do need a centralized cache that all of the different processes and the different pods can access to. So I think that's where it got me to land, and with Susan and Binbin's help to deducing this, we should have some sort of encryption of the data when we store the credentials in the centralized cache. And that adds complexity in terms of you got to be able to encrypt and decrypt on the fly. So what slight performance hit is that going to take? But more importantly, how do you rotate keys? So let's say key becomes compromised. How do you re-encrypt all the data in the cache? We could follow a 2 encryption key strategy, which is you implement like a data encryption key, and then that key is what's used to encrypt the data, and then you use a key encryption key, which encrypts the key, so that you don't actually need to re-encrypt the data. You just re-encrypt the key again if you rotate keys.
If we think the certificate rotation is going to be like a how often did we ever figure out how often are we planning on rotating certificates? Is this a common?
So for the cert rotation for the TLS bit that was added in Binbin's PR last time, that one by default Gatekeeper gives 10-year time length for those. So unless the certificate actually gets compromised, the rotation should be relatively infrequent. But certain cloud providers have different cadences for certificate rotation, which are much shorter than that. So that's when it becomes a bigger problem. So we're talking about maybe once a month.
Can we detect that and flush the cache?
We can detect that. And what we could do is we could invalidate those cache entries and then force a reload of it. So that's one option to do that. That's probably the best option rather than having to re-encrypt a bunch of data. Like we'll just eat the cost and grab fresh credentials.
Especially if it's an infrequent action or not. I think that makes sense. Yeah. The encryption and decryption might be like, again, it might be just exploring kind of what and this might be something we can ask Shiwei. I feel like Shiwei might have some good input here in terms of what's the best way to sort of encrypt and decrypt that would optimize for perf.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I'll send him over the document that I'd written on this, and then also share some of those findings. But recently I was in parallel looking into Dapper and seeing how would that play into Ratify, because Gatekeeper is adopting Dapper for some of their functionality, and looks like they have integration with state stores. So Dapper is like a shim, and it integrates with any sort of database state store implementation. So Redis, Memcached, you could even run like another database like MariaDB or Cockroach, any of those. and you just interact with Dapper solely. So the application only interacts with Dapper, and then you can plug and play with whatever underlying state store you want to use. Among some of the benefits of using Dapper is that they actually provide an option to encrypt and decrypt data on the fly, which is nice. And they handle the actual rotation of the keys too. So that, I think that looks promising. Maybe we can consider actually using Dapper instead of us having to reinvent the wheel and create all of these new functionality.
Yep.
So yeah, I just wanted to get other people's thoughts. Like I was going to go down the Dapper route and try to prototype something and see how that works.
Yep. I think that makes all the sense in the world.
So yeah, there's a lot of other great things that come from Dapper. They provide MTLS connection support right off the bat, including the TLS cert rotation for the Dapper client. They also provide metrics emission. They also provide resiliency. So if there's network or any sort of connectivity to the underlying state store, they have automatic retry capabilities, as well as like circuit breaker rules that you can set on the retries. You can set up health probes on it too. So a lot of stuff that we get for free if we switch to Dapper.
We'll have a read at the Docker cache, and then we'll see what comments we collect next week or throughout the week once the min's back.
Yep. I'll send out the documents. Yep.
Wonder what's the best place, like maybe the Slack channel. It's all like publicly visible, right? It's not an internal doc.
Yes. Yeah. So I can post in there too, get some feedback from others.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
we've started doing that for any design docs and these conversations. Like, let's just post it in Slack. Sweet. Is there anything else in the agenda?
If nothing else, we're at time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Bye.
Talk to you
Thanks.
next week.
See you.